I want to talk about hooks for roach fishing and the lines I tie them to. As I've been roach fishing a very long time, I've seen many changes with hooks. Back in the very early 70s, I bought hooks to nylon by people like Pegley Davis with Cannel hooks, which were a French O-line door. Later we got supplied with Mustad hooks like the old 39853 forged round bend. And as I started to match fish more, used the fine wire Cannel hooks and also hooks by VMC with fine wire hooks. The big change came in the mid-80s when we got chemically sharpened hooks from what was called Komatsu, which is now Kamasan, Drennan, which may well be made by the same people. Mustad changed their tune. They started producing chemically sharpened hooks, and as time went on we got hooks from Tubertini, Katsuchi, and all sorts of other makes have come along since. So you get hooks from Maver and Guru, Preston, and so on. It's easy for me to talk about hooks that are long obsolete. You're not going to be able to buy them, but I will mention some because they were so good. Dob Chislett, who was one of the great Christchurch match anglers, put me onto some hooks for bread fishing. He was a great fan of fishing with bread, flake and punch. And he told me about two hooks, that a Mustad Sproat hook, which is a very fine wire, size 12, 39082. And I've still got some of those because I bought about 700 or 800 at the time, and I'm still using them now. I don't use that many hooks a year, so they'll last forever. And there was a size 10 hook in a Mustad Limmerick bend, which was a 202. I haven't got any of those 10s. I've got a few 12s in that one. I'd love to get a few 10s, but I'll be lucky. As time went on, I found substitutes for those hooks. The nearest to the Limerick bend is a Kamasan B511, which is a fine wire crystal bend, and it's not a bad hook in a 14, 12 and a 10 for roach fishing with bread, so it's good for those. There's a very small hook, a size 20. It's not a bad hook for fishing a single or double maggot when you want to fish fine. Another hook that was similar was the original Drennan carbon match that came out around about 85, 86. And the very early ones, I've got a few left with quite a fine wire, very sharp, very small barb. Very good in a 16 and a 20. I never really use the 18s much. The 20 for fishing a maggot, single or double, and the 16 for fishing bread punch. I've still got a few of those. As time went on, the hook changed. The wire got a tiny bit thicker, 1 gauge thicker. The barb became a little bit bigger, and it wasn't as sharp. It's still not as sharp. Those hooks have changed. Drennan changed their patterns to a lot more incurve point hooks. So if you find a Drennan carbon match now, it's not the same hook. Drennan do a new hook, which is the Barbless Silverfish match, and I like these in a 14 and a 16. 14 for bread punch and small bits of bread flake, and the 16 for tears and bread punch again. Although it's barbless, I don't lose many hooks. I've had big catches last year on the river, not lost a fish, so they stay in. And even in the summer when it's weedy, although I tend towards a barbed hook, I will use those if I can. Just makes life easy to unhook the fish. The 20, which is what these are, is lovely, except it seems to lose its point quite quickly with no apparent reason, especially when you're hooking a maggot on. You know if that hook is razor sharp. At the moment it's not, it just won't go into the maggot very easily. So one to watch. I like these hooks. So Drennan, sort out your quality. Some of the historic hooks I used, Drennan used to do a Team England Super Carbon maggot, which was quite a nice hook in a 16 for bread punch, a little bit small to some of them, not bad for tears as well. So I've used that for tears. Well, I've still got a stock of them, but it's not one you're going to find unless it's a few old ones that someone on eBay is trying to get rid of. One modern equivalent of those old Sproat and Limericks is the Kamasan B611s and B511s. And in a size 10, which seems an enormous hook for roach fishing, it's perfect for fishing the move-in feeder. You might think, oh, I'll use a 14 or a 12. It doesn't work. You need the 10. Sounds an enormous hook, but I've caught roach down to 4 or 5 inches, which I don't want, on size 10s. But the ones that I do want, the pounders, can still get that in their mouths easily enough. And it's a nice hook to use. They're very strong. Prefer the B511, slightly finer wire. I do use that hook in smaller sizes with bread on the float, 14s and 12s. The B611 Barbless in a 22 and a 20 is quite a nice hook as well on still waters like commercials where you must use Barbless hooks quite often. So I will use that in a Barbless in those small sizes. I like the 22 B611 Barbless for fishing Whitemore in winter. The B5 is only a barbed hook. There's no barbless version of that one. There is a B711 which is stronger wire still. That's not bad if you're going to hook bonus carp and things like that. I've used Preston hooks for a few years. I don't use them a lot because I can't get them in my local shops anymore. I have to go up to Todber. But they now do a natural series for sort of fishing non-commercials that are barbed hooks. One of the ones that took my fancy, and I've tried it a few times, is the natural N20. It's a barbed hook, quite fine wire, not an incurved point. It's quite nice in a 14 or a 12 when you're expecting better roach. Sort of hook you might want to use on the Hampshire Avon in the winter with bread. The size 12 is probably not a bad hook to ledge your bread with. And I use it on the upper stow where I'm expecting a mixture of sort of chub and roach. A bit more of a chub hook than a roach hook. When it comes to lines to tie them to, I've used all sorts of lines. I used Bayer Purlon for many years for my hook lengths, and we used other long obsolete lines. You can still get Bayer, whether you can still get Bayer 1.1, which is what we tied the smaller hooks to, I don't know. You certainly get 1.7 and 2.1 and stuff like that. But I moved on to the special copolymers, as they're called, many years ago. Reflow Power is the one I've used now because I can buy it. The thing about Reflow Power is the diameter is understated. So this says 0.09 millimeters, probably 0.105. Probably understated by 1 or 2 hundredths of a millimeter. So by the time you get to the sort of 0.13, it's probably really 0.15 and so on. Down in the lower ones, 0.08 is probably 0.09, 0.09 is probably 0.10, 0.10 is probably 0.11 and so on. But it's strong, it's reliable, it ties to the hooks nicely. It doesn't do a pigtail when you tie it. That's all that matters. Have used other lines like this, some Shimano Aspire 0.08. If I want really fine stuff, which is not so much, is only on places like Whitemore with the very small, very fine hooks. I might use some of that. I haven't got much of it. That's about it for lines. Keep it simple, tie them carefully. I use a bench tie called an easy tie. That dates to 1975, so you'll be lucky to find one of those except on eBay. Matchman hook ties are fine, although my bench tire makes it easier to get the tension consistently correct. I use plenty of turns when I tie the hooks, probably at least 10 or 12. Tighten them carefully. If it pigtails when I'm tightening it up, I cut it off and start again. Get it right. And I always have 22-inch hook lengths on float fishing gear, not as opposed to pole rigs. Pole rigs I'd use probably a 6-inch hook length. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of Roach Reflections. There's plenty more to come, hopefully a lot more action as we go through the series. Please click like and subscribe.